Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Now I am in the process of sewing for myself. I haven't sewn for a while for myself, but I've got my sewing mojo back and I've pulled out some commercial patterns that I'm going to be working on. Now as you know, I am the Surfer Designs agent in South Africa, and that is a pattern fitting system that we use to design all our own patterns. Now when I feel like quick weekend sewing, I do go into my stash that I have of commercial patterns that I've built up over the years, and I pull out there and see what I want to use. Now my first project that I've done for myself now, or the first garment, is a Cardigan. I've been seeing a lot of Cardigans popping up online. I went into one of our shopping centers last week and I saw quite a bit of Cardigans and I saw quite a bit of coats as well. Now a Cardigan is really a hybrid between a coat and a cardigan. It is also known as a sweater blazer or a sweater jacket because it's made with our stretch or our knit fabrics. So I decided, well, this is the perfect project to start with. I love wearing my cardigans, but I'm tired of the same old pattern over and over again. So doing the Cardigan now with this bit of a shawl collar is really something different for my wardrobe. Now the pattern that I'm using for my Cardigan is a McCalls pattern. It's McCalls 7476 and it's one of the Learn to Sew for Fun patterns. It is really an easy pattern, excellent instructions on sewing this Cardigan. So if you are new to garment sewing, this will also be a perfect project for you to try. Now I'm going to, in this video, as I said, I am sewing for myself. I'm recording here and there where I want to highlight a couple of things for you, like how I chose my size. Then I'm also going to just talk about the facing a little bit. I didn't like the width of their facing, so I'm going to talk you through my changes that I've done there. And then I thought I wanted to just talk to you about understitching as well in this video, because if we're not going to do understitching, you are not going to get this perfect roll of the collar where this collar just slightly goes to the wrong side where our under collar is. Also understitch your facing, and that's also going to give you that beautiful finish on the facing as well. I do talk more in detail about what understitching is, so if you again are new to garment sewing, please make sure to look at that section so that you get that professional finish. Now one thing that I do want to mention as well, fabric choice is going to be very important. They do recommend fleece. They say you can use fleece. I tested it with fleece. I did not like the fleece. There is no lining. It's an unlined Cardigan. There is no darts in there, and as soon as I work with bulky fabric, I do prefer to have darts so that I can shape it. I need that bust dart for my bigger cup size to shape it. Otherwise I am going to get terrible drag lines, and with the bulky fabric as well, it does stand away a little bit from my body. Another thing with the fleece, I just found that it was clinging to the clothing that I had on because there's no lining there. So make sure that you are going to choose the right fabric when you are going to be working with this pattern as well. Now let's start by looking at my size that I chose, and I'm going to talk you through how I chose my size because I fall into a large and not in the medium, but I opted to go with the medium and my reasoning behind it. Before I talk to you about how I choose my sizing with commercial patterns and also a couple of pattern changes that I have done to the pattern pieces, I just want us to have a look at the pattern. Now we've got different options with this dropped shoulder Cardigan. We've got 3 length options. We've also got different finishes. We can add that collar, or we can just go and finish it with the facing. If you look at view A, with that drop shoulder over there, they didn't sew on the sleeve section, so that gives us again another look. So a lot of options that we do have in this one pattern. Then when I turn to the back, if you are working with knits, any stretch fabric, you always want to make sure that you are looking at what they are giving us there for the suggested stretch for our fabric. Now to do your stretch or to measure that stretch of the fabric, we are going to take our fabric with the maximum stretch, and I am actually going to place it on that black section, which is 10 centimeters or 4 inches, and I'm going to stretch my fabric to make sure that I've got that amount of stretch. When we are going to do it, we don't do it on that raw edge. I'm going to pick it up a little bit and just fold it in. If you're working with your full piece of fabric, move away from that selvage. Now all I'm going to do, I'm going to place it there, and I'm just holding it with my thumb on either side there. You can go and put pins as well if you want to, but I usually just hold my fabric like this and then I go and I stretch it, and I'm making sure that I've got a stretch to where they are suggesting this fabric should stretch. If you don't do this and you are working with a fabric that doesn't have that amount of stretch, your Cardigan is going to be too small by the time you've sewn it. If you've got too much stretch again, then you're going to find that your Cardigan is too big. Remember, these patterns are designed for the amount of stretch of the fabric that they are suggesting. Now, looking at my size as well, and I'm just going to turn it this way now. This pattern comes in an extra small, small and medium in one envelope, and then it comes in a large, extra large and your double XL in the next envelope. Now, I am really just falling into that large section, but when I look at the measurements that I have for the body and I look at the measurements on the pattern, that is how I decide what size I'm going to do. Now, I'm going to work here with a pattern which is a medium, and on the medium it tells me that it's actually a size 12 to 14, and that is for 87 to 92 centimeter bust measurement. In inches, that will be 34 to 36 inches. Then that is guiding me and telling me, okay, that's more or less the size I want to be. And then I go to my front pattern piece. On that front pattern piece, you will see a section with your apex marked, and that is then going to tell us what that measurement of the finished garment is going to be. We usually have it for our front pattern piece where it's marked, and if they have also given us the measurements on the sleeve, you will also find it on your sleeve there. So with this now, I can go and see how much ease is really in this garment. So I compare their measurement, and where they said for a medium 87 to 92 centimeters, I now go and look at a medium and what is that finished measurement. Now here it is telling me 96 centimeters, which is 38 inches. So I'm looking at a medium. It said 87 to 92, so I know if I'm 92 centimeters, I've got 4 centimeter ease built into this pattern. If I was to the smaller size of the medium, which is 87 centimeters, that is now going then to give me 9 centimeter ease that is built into this. So this is where I start comparing. I know by designing my own patterns how much ease I do like in my garments, and then that is guiding me to choose my size. When I did the same thing with the large, and I am on the smaller side of the large, which is 97 centimeters, by the time I actually look at the finished garment measurement, I had too much ease. For me, that is way too much, and I decided that I'm not going to sew the large. I'm rather going to go to the medium. Now, if you are doing this way of choosing your patterns, you have to be aware of what you like, how much ease you like in your patterns. For me, with a woven over the bust, I like about 6.5, 7 centimeters, and I know I can be slightly smaller now because I do have, or less ease because I do have stretch in the garment. It is still outerwear garment, so I do need ease. We are not going to go to any negative ease when we're working with outer garments. So that is what I've done there. Pattern changes that I've done. I always zoom in on the sizing for the sleeve because I need a bigger bicep measurement on my sleeve, or a finished bicep measurement on the sleeve. And my bicep measures 35 centimeters. Their finished measurement for a medium was 37. That only gives me 2 centimeter ease. That's just under an inch. I want 5 centimeters, which is 2 inches. Remember, I want to wear a long sleeve t-shirt or a long sleeve top underneath this cardigan or this Cardigan. So I know by comparing this now and seeing what the finished pattern measurement is that I need to add 3 centimeters to my sleeve pattern. Now, I'm not going to do any fancy alterations here because it is a dropped sleeve. So all I really want to do is just add on 1.5 centimeters and 1.5 centimeters on either side, which is going to give me my 3 centimeters. So that will be 5/8 of an inch and 5/8 of an inch that I decided to add on. I also went, and you'll see my red lines. Any measuring, any changes you do will always be on the stitching line. So I did go and then afterwards measure on the stitching line, and I saw that I ended up with 40.5 centimeters for this circumference of the sleeve, which I'm happy with. Because I've done changes to my sleeve, I have to go and make changes to this underarm or this armhole section. Remember, we've got a dropped shoulder here, but I do want to make sure that when I'm sewing my sleeve in to this armhole section, I don't want to be gathering this. It's got to be a smooth transition from that side seam running into that sleeve. So all I did here is also, again, you can see my red lines, that is the stitching line. I made sure that when I measured on it, that I actually accommodated the change I did there. So in effect, I literally dropped 1.5 centimeters at the underarm point on my front and my back pattern piece, and I went and I recurved it into my seam that I have. Oops, I'm showing the wrong seam. Here where I've dropped it, I've actually recurved it so that I'm back where my notches are. And this is a change on the front and the back. I did go and measure on that stitching line and compared it to the sleeve, and it was spot on. It was exactly the same, which I wanted. Now let's look at the facing. Here I also did some alterations to the pattern before I even cut it out from the paper. So I could see when I looked at the facing, and it's from this edge to that line that you're seeing there. By the time I take off my seam allowance, which is 1.5 centimeters, I'm left with 5 centimeter facing or 2 inches. I don't like narrow facings. It's not, for me, it doesn't look good. I prefer slightly wider. I want about 7.5 centimeter finished facing. So I ended up on this line there. Instead of cutting on this line, I added another inch or 2.5 centimeters, and I drew that line, copying basically or mimicking the line that I have here. So all the way I've just gone and I've done my 2.5 centimeters, and then on this back facing, remember what I do on the front, I have to do on the back. And again, I just added on that 2.5 centimeters or my 1 inch. I didn't do any changes here on the fold or there. Don't go change that. That's still going to work with my neckline that I have on my pattern piece. So this is really, if you can see here as well, I kept to the medium size neckline, extended it on that hemline as well. So that was my changes that I've made to the pattern before I even did anything else, so that I know I'm going to be happy with my facing. So from here on now, I am going to go and cut out my fabric, and then I think I'll just do a short section for you on my fusible interfacing so that you also see my steps when I am working with fusible interfacing. Now, when we are looking at working with stretch fabric and fusible interfacing, I don't use a woven fusible interfacing with my stretch fabrics. I want a fusible interfacing that's going to be moving with my fabric. It has to have stretch in it. Remember, with a stretch fabric, as I'm moving along, that fabric is moving with my body, stretching a little bit where it needs to give. And if I've got a woven fusible interfacing in there that's preventing that movement or preventing that stretch, I'm going to feel it. It is going to be uncomfortable. So for me, it is always so important to use, and I'm just looking for my other piece that I had. Oh, there it is. It is really important to choose the right fusible interfacing for the project you're working on. Now, first off, your fusible interfacing mustn't be heavier than what your fabric is that you're going to work with. So I do tend to have lots of a lighter weight fusible when I am going to be sewing, and then I do have one that's slightly stiffer, and that is usually for my wovens where I'm doing a shirt and I really want that crisp collar, where I've got that placket that I've got to do that fusing with, or even a cuff. So that is really my two that I tend to work with quite a lot. Now, looking at this one, you can see that this is really a very sheer fusible interfacing, and it does have quite a nice stretch to it. And here's a strip that I've cut just to show you the amount of stretch. And I just want to open that up. Let's just get this open, and you can see that this is actually stretching as I'm doing this. It is not going to hold this fabric in, preventing it to actually move with my body. If we look at my collar there, and I've done my fusible interfacing, look at my collar movement that I do have there. So it does stabilize the knit fabric, but I still have my movement on those pieces that has been fused with the interfacing. Now, on the back pattern piece where they did ask for stay stitching, I didn't do stay stitching. I prefer on my knits to rather go and do a edge tape. if I'm going to be sewing it, and depending on the machine we're using, sometimes it's already stretching out that neck when I'm just doing that stay stitching with my knit fabrics. So I take a tape and I work with this edge tape. It's 1 centimeter wide, and I just want to open it up here for you, and I go and I press it onto my fabric to stabilize it. Now this is also what I use on my woven fabrics. It doesn't have any give. I don't want it to give. I don't want that neckline to grow when I am going to be sewing it. So looking at my back pattern piece where I did my fusible, and I've just got to get my back pattern piece. That is the sleeve. I think I've got it on this side. These are all my pieces that's been ironed with the fusible interfacing. It's the front facing, that back neck facing, and the collar. What I've done on this section, let's just go back to our tape. You'll feel that on the one side it feels like almost there's like a bit of a graininess to it. The other side is smooth. So you put it with that graininess, and that is our glue, onto the fabric. And as I'm going to press it, I do give it a couple of cuts just from that top section so that I can fold it over and then carry on pressing. I need to get the curve over there. Trying to do it just with a straight piece, you can see what's happening with those folds. So it's really easier for me to just nip it in a little bit. And I'm going to try and zoom in, and I'm hoping that you can see it. But on these sections, I've actually nipped it just to move the tape along. There as well, there as well. And I go and I fuse this together. Then the additional tape that you are seeing that I do have on the shoulder section, I decided I wanted a little bit more stabilizing on that section over there. Now my shoulder length is 12 centimeters, and I went and I did a 12 centimeter piece of this edge tape that I ironed on there. And from here I really didn't want to go and add more of that stabilizer. Here I really wanted it to move with my body as my arm is moving, lifting up. I really wanted to move with the fabric. I didn't want to go and stop any movement there. I really just want no movement on that seam. I don't want the seam to grow and eventually it feels uncomfortable and it's not sitting right on the arm section as well. That is my reasoning behind stabilizing just that section. So that is really all I did now to prepare my pattern pieces. I made sure everything is fused, everything where I need to stabilize on the neck area, on that shoulder, that is all done. I'm now busy with my collar, and I've sewn the collar together, and I've also gone and I've understitched it. Now I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about understitching. It is asking you in that instructions to understitch your collar and to understitch the facing when we sew it to the body of the cardigan. Now what is understitching? Understitching is really a line of stitches that you do on the facing side, or in this case on the under collar, to just secure that facing so that it's not rolling to the right side of the fabric. Now with the under collar, especially going around the neck where it's slightly pulling a little bit to get that curve, you will find that usually if there's no understitching, that under collar will be rolling to the right side, so you can really see that fabric coming over to that right side. And we don't want that. We really want that beautiful flat finish, that professional look. And in this case, that is our understitching. So I am bringing it close up so you can see where I've already pressed it. You can see my understitching over there, and you can see a little bit of the fabric that's going to show on the right side rolling over when I pressed it. Now when you do your understitching, you're going to sew the under collar, and if it's the facing, you're sewing the facing to your seam allowance. So as you can see here, you see my stitching line, which was when I sewed the collar together. Then about 3 millimeters from there, I've gone and I've done my understitching row, and you can see that the seam allowance is actually sewn to the interfaced section. I do this specifically to the interface section because this is going to be my under collar that I have. Now when I'm sewing it, I actually open up the fabric, and I'm going to put it this way around because I guide it with my presser foot that I have, and I let this section of my presser foot that I have, I've got a guide, I let it run in that seam line. I've moved my needle 3 millimeters to that side. I think it was about 3 or 4 movements that I had to move my needle position, and I go and I just sew this, making sure that as I'm sewing that I'm feeling the seam allowance so that it's folding to this side of the under collar. So that is all you have to do there. And then when you go to the ironing board and you put this together, automatically you'll find that the top of your collar is rolling to that bottom. It gives you that beautiful roll just happening on there. So at no time will I have that under collar moving to the outside, so that you can actually see it sticking out and you see my stitching line that I've done. So for me, this is really, really a beautiful finish that we do on our collars. We do it on our facings as well, so that the facing doesn't show on the outside or the right side of our fabric. Now, once I've done this understitching, I have gone and I've pressed it, and because my fabric is slightly rolling to that back, I've also made sure then that I just went and I placed everything together and I just trimmed that little bit of uneven fabric that I have. Remember, with this rolling to the back, to that under collar, you might find that you have a little bit of that under collar showing. So I made sure that I smoothed everything out, and I went with my rotary cutter and I just evened out on that edge. I've now sewn on the collar. I've also done the facing, so I did want to show you my understitching before I go and press these seams. Now, I have pinned this in place because there's no pressing done yet, and I just wanted to keep it so that it's lying flat over there. One other thing that I do want to mention before I did my understitching, I did go and I did trim a little bit on this section where the collar is. I had a lot of thick layers, so my collar section that I had, which is also a double layer, I just went and I trimmed that, and then I went and I overlocked the edges just to keep everything nice and smooth. So with that little bit of a trimming, or we also call it grading of the seams, I have reduced quite a little bit of the bulk that I had in this collar section. Now, looking at my understitching, and I just wanted to show it to you before I actually go and press it. If we open this up, and I'm going to try and come close so you can see it. I have done my understitching again on the facing section, and I'm 3 millimeters from my seam that I've stitched. If we look on the inside, remember where we are doing our understitching, that seam allowance must go to the section which we are going to be doing our understitching on. In this case, it's my facing. When it was my collar, the seam allowance went to my under collar, which was also interfaced. So that is what we've got to make sure, that we are stitching that seam allowance to the facing. So now, once I've done that, and here I just want to fold it in, and I'm going to just show you, look how that fabric rolls naturally to the inside. And I'm going to take a close-up photo as well so you can see, because I'm not sure if you can see this on camera, but even before I'm pressing it, it's just bringing the right side of my fabric slightly to the inside. So I've got no facing showing on the right side. You can't even see that seam where I've sewn my facing and my Cardigan together. So that is for me always the preferred finish that I do want. Now, the steps that they also tell us in the instructions is then, once you're at this stage, to go and tack down the facing on certain spots, so that we still don't have, when we're wearing it, that by accident this actually lifts and it folds out slightly. So we don't want that happening. Now, what I decided to do is I will tack from the hem basically to this section, and that is what, once I've done my hem, let me just mention that, because I've still got to do the hem. And this side also, basically from hem level to about there, I'll do a little bit of tacking here and there. But I decided on this collar section, because there's a lot of fabric still in this area where I have the roll of that collar, I decided to just open up the collar, and I'm going to do a bit of top stitching. Now remember, understitching is when we're catching the facing or the under collar. We're not doing both layers. Understitching we don't see on the right side. Top stitching is where I'm catching all my layers and I can see that stitching on the right side of my fabric. So I'm basically going to pick up, and from here I'm just going to do a little bit of a top stitching for myself, just to keep all these layers together. For me, then once I fold this back again, when I'm wearing it, no one's going to see that I've done any top stitching there. That is just my preferred way of doing it. You can still go and just tack it here and there. Maybe tack it at that shoulder line. Just make sure that nothing is going to come out when you are wearing it. But my preferred way, and I'm just mentioning it again, is to go and top stitch. I'm not top stitching from here, because then you're going to see my top stitching when this folds back. I really want to pick it up from where you are not going to be seeing my top stitching going all the way around to about that section there as well. So that is what I'm going to do to finish this off. And then I've just got my hems to do, and I'm still thinking, do I want to put pockets? I think I might end up doing pockets as well. So that is the last bit of the sewing, so that we can then go and have a final look at what our cardigan looks like. I decided to put the cardigan on so that you can see what it looks like on my body. Now I've just put it on with my jeans and a tank top, but this is definitely something that I'll be able to dress up as well. Now let's look at what it looks like. Remember, I chose a size medium and not the size large. I fell into that large size, but when I compared that finished pattern measurement and saw how much ease I do have, I chose the medium, and I'm really happy that I did choose it. It would have been too big for me if I've gone to the large, because that would have been way too much fabric for my body. I am short, so I've always got to be careful of having stuff that is oversized on my body. Now another thing that I also want to mention on the instructions of this pattern, they do have you sew the seams and pressing it open, so they do suggest sewing on your sewing machine. I did go and do my sewing on my overlocker. I prefer doing all my stretch or my knit fabrics on the overlocker because I can control the seam with my differential feed. Now if you're not too sure on how to set in your differential feed, please have a look at the link below. I have done some videos. It's a 5-part video series where I work on the overlockers, and I do tell you in detail how to set in that differential feed so that you don't get any stretching or waving on your fabric. Now the only place I do want to mention this that I did go to the sewing machine is when I worked with my collar and I did my facing. I wanted to make sure that I'm working accurate, so I didn't want to take a chance of, I'll rather go and unpick sewing stitches than overlocker stitches, if I'm honest. So that is also one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that everything is matching, that these points are also matching perfectly where my collar is. Now one thing that you will notice is I haven't done the pockets. They do give you pockets, but when I pinned it on, I did not like the look. I'm not someone that likes having pockets on the hip area. It draws your eyes there, and I do have a bigger hip measurement than what my bust measurement is, so I try and balance it out, and as soon as these pockets or detail, it's going to draw the eye there. So I have decided to make another one, and I'm actually going to do a pocket in that side seam. I'm going to do that slit pocket for myself. Now if you do have other commercial patterns, go have a look at them. Somewhere there you will find a pocket piece that is actually sewn into the side seam, and just use that pocket. You don't have to go design a pocket for yourself. Use the instructions that comes with that pattern as well, and that is what I'm going to do for myself. Now lengthwise, I did have to go shorten a little bit. I did the view D of the pattern and I left it. I didn't want to go and change the length. I wanted to make sure I'm going to be happy with the fabric that I'm working with and where it's sitting on my body. Now I ended up taking 8 centimeters off. It's just over 3 inches. Now there's all sorts of calculations out there on how to make a garment that's balanced to your height, all of that. For me, the easiest way when I'm pinning and when I'm sewing for myself is to actually take my arm, and wherever my finger comes to on my body, that is really the mid-thigh length that I like. So if I'm going a longer length, it's usually that length, and for me it works. It's more balanced, and so that's just the easy way of doing it, instead of going and trying to figure out where do I want that length to be. Quite a quick thing to do. So if you have this pattern in your drawer, go take it out, go try and make it. It is really a quick, easy weekend project to make, and it's just a little bit different from our regular cardigans that we tend to make all the time. Now, one thing that I do want to just mention again is that fabric choice is going to make or break this. this cardigan for you. For me, it did not work in a fleece fabric. It's an unlined jacket. I found that when I tried it on, it was actually clinging to my clothing underneath it because there's no lining in there. And again, the bulk, I didn't like the bulk. The bulk really affects how this collar rolls. It also affected how it sits on my body at this area where we've got this dropped shoulder. Remember, when we are working with more bulky, I would always look rather at a pattern that's got a bit of dots so that I can do shaping and shape that fabric to my body. So that is now all from me on this cardigan. I really hope that you enjoyed seeing what I'm doing behind the scenes. If you want more of these sort of videos, please let me know, because I am going to be sewing more for myself, and then I can share the pattern choices that I'm making, my fabric choices that I'm making, and just give you tips here and there on the sewing process as well. So let me know in the comments, please, if you would like me to carry on doing these sort of videos, or if it's a no for you, then please say no, we would rather want to see something else. I do appreciate that feedback. It helps me on deciding what I'm going to be recording next. So that is it from me now for this video. So go and enjoy your sewing, and then we will chat again soon in the next video.